Hey, everybody, do not immediately leave this. You are going to be able to get in for a treat on today. You will be able to hear me talk to another grower friend of mine, Ryan, in Florida. So I mentioned you because you person deserve to hear from a plant biologist about plant biology, right? So don't just immediately leave. Don't leave this science. I know some of you will be like, no, he didn't talk to me. Let me cut this off. Don't do it because I'm going to be able to talk to people, you all, about these plants, right? So they're coming in. We're going to get started right now. I wanted Ryan to get in here, a fat plant grow, because all of you, as he's coming in, all of you are trying to grow plants, right? That's why you're all here. Don't leave. Don't leave. It's a quick series. Okay, all of you are trying to grow plants, right? That's what we're all trying to do. And because you're growing plants, yes, clean face, because you are growing plants, you are going to run into people who are going to be putting all sorts of BS on the internet. But this series that I just started, Ryan was like, we should talk. I was like, let's make it a series. It may be him in the future. It may be other people. I don't know yet. I'm making this up as I go. You'll be able to hear us talk about different topics of growing plants from experienced plant growers, plant breeders, plant biologists, horticulturists, all of that jazz. And you'll be able to ask some questions. So this is your time. Just leave me playing in the background. Don't leave. Don't leave. People say they want to hear me talk about science and then they leave. So, Ryan, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me all right?
I can. To the person that said they're going to unfollow now, see ya. I am
Yo,
good.
I heard you were racist, bud.
You know, the people try to tell me I'm many a thing, but Jesus calls me blessed. So I don't care what the people say.
Yo, so if people don't know, Derek and I have been buddies on here for a few years now. This is a whole ass botanist, as he likes to refer to. Um, yeah, where academics come in, this is the man that I will go to oftentimes to ask some questions. And today, I think we're talking a little bit about cinnamon, but a little bit of everything else. I'm down to one hand right now. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Oh, God, what happened to your head?
So I moved a 360-pound boulder off a pallet, and it fell back onto my hand yesterday and dislocated my middle finger.
Mm,
But I can move it.
we are glad you can move it. We are glad you can move it. So
It can work.
this is dope. And a lot of you who are coming in, again, we're having a series. The more you grow, you can ask us about plant things. We are going to be talking about cinnamon today. Um, So let's go ahead and jump into it. Ryan is an experienced grower, and I am also an experienced grower. I have grown over 1 million plants in my lifetime, and that is a legitimate number. I wish I was making that up, but I worked at a production facility where we grew one crop of Nicotiana benthaminiana, which is a type of tobacco. So I grew a lot of that. I'm a whole plant biologist. I've grown a lot of plants, and we're going to talk about cinnamon. We're going to talk about cinnamon in regards to like rooting hormones, fungicide, all of that stuff. Ryan, tell these people about you.
All right. I've been growing now 14 plus years. The last 7 professionally down here in Florida. I started up in Columbus, Ohio with a strange set of plants. Fell in love with pachypodiums and desert roses early on. Not really the kind of thing you'd expect to be pumping out of Ohio. They go dormant 5-6 months out of the year up there, but yeah, I really kind of figured those things out. Used to, excuse me, we got a golf cart driving by. Um, all right, he's gone. I'm out in the middle of my front yard, so there will be some noise distractions, and my speakers on this phone aren't working too well. I don't have earbuds tonight because the last time they just sounded even worse. Anyway, yeah, I used to decorate my buildings in my 20s with live plants and just fell in love with that. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. I moved down to Florida to be closer with him and just said, hey, I'm not doing the management thing anymore. We're just going to dive into plants, and reinvented myself in my early 30s. I'm now 40. Started working at 12 bucks an hour, previously making 60, 70 a year. And yeah, started from the ground up down here. Florida people had to learn me, and yeah, we do things at a different level. And part of the reason why I'm firmly believing in cinnamon,
Well, we
but it's not for everybody. and it's not. And the mixture, there's a number of things that we've touched on along the way where it absolutely won't work. But yeah, I'm here to talk about all of it. I've got some specimens next to me ready to share and show. And yeah,
So
Derek's the
this,
man. Like I, some of the comments, some of the stuff that's been coming your way lately has been absolutely obnoxious. Yo, the DEI comment, are you fucking kidding?
look, I get slack from black and other non-black people who are angry at me. There's people right now who are angry at me for electroculture, but we're not talking about that. I appreciate you. Cinnamon is the main reason for the season, right? And the premise is, for those of you who don't know, again, new series, The More You Grow, you was not necessarily mentioned by me, those of you joining, but I'm trying to get the people in because the people will be saying, I repeat this often, people be like, you don't talk about science. I want to hear you talk about science, and then talk about science, and then none of you come in. It's the craziest thing in the world, right? It's insane, Ryan. You give people what they want, and they don't really want it because they just saying stuff. But regardless, talk about cinnamon. A lot of people will proclaim to me that cinnamon is antifungal, antibacterial, and is a rooting hormone. I have said what I've had to say about it as far as those terms and stuff goes, right? So I think we should really hit on that. Some people are saying, like, are we talking about regular cinnamon versus Celium? Nope, not pronouncing that today. The other cinnamon, my Eastern Carolinian tongue is not letting me do it today. And we're going to talk about that, some plant propagation in general. And we'll go from there. And we're going to be up here for a hot 30 minutes. We started around 7:36, 7:38. So around 8:08, we are out of here, Eastern Standard Time. So I am really against the cinnamon being promoted as a rooting hormone. And the reason why, party people, is because it's not like a legitimate hormone. It's not like a culmination or concentration of a hormone that actually will be used for your plants. Like, I can't go into the store and be like, rooting hormone. It's containing like 100% cinnamon. Like, I've never.
You're 100% right there. With root production, that is not the case. That's not happening with cinnamon. So as far as using it as a rooting hormone, it's not what, I mean, that's not what we're using it for. That's not what I'm using it for. And I find it to be as good as rooting hormone because rooting hormone ain't working either. So here's the truth. It's all about antifungal and antibacterial properties. So from my research and my experiences, cinnamon, and not every type of cinnamon, but some of the higher grade cinnamons absolutely have an antifungal property. And what it has to do with is the destruction of cell walls and cell membranes.
Ooh,
so
tell the people, please go.
The proliferation of the fungal cell walls and cell membranes cannot happen in the existence of cinnamon. But depending on your soil media, you could turn your soil media funky too. Now I'm growing in incredibly well-draining. Here's, let me just show. I grow desert roses in Florida. So down here we have daily rains when they come, and these guys are from Africa, Madagascar, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, places like that with incredibly dry climates. I'm using a very, very well-draining soil for that. I would not throw cinnamon on a peat-covered soil. I'm not using a peat-covered soil. That's not for me. My stuff is 20% perlite. I'm using incredibly well-draining. There's some sand in there. There's a little bit of everything, but it's, I don't know. I'm a light temperature and water guy. I look at soil as keeping that kind of trinity in check. But it can't, and I'm outdoors. So this is a completely different situation. Like, my stuff's getting fried. Some of these desert roses have to be fed or watered every few days because of how hot it is. I don't know if that could be pulled off indoors. I haven't been an indoor grower in many years, but it started up in Ohio. I did it for 7 years there, 8 down here now. But you're right. I mean, there are aspects of cinnamon that can screw things up and cause some more issues for your plants. But for me and the well draining and the type of soil that I'm using, I've learned this from my friends in Thailand and Brazil, and they're the best. I mean, for what I do, they're the best.
So you said something that was really interesting to me. that a lot of these people don't say when they talk about cinnamon on your soil. I have, some people will be like, you can't know anything if you don't try it. And I say that's bull hockey. If you know enough, you don't have to try most things. But I had some cinnamon, Ryan. Our dear sister Camille, the plant blurred.
Yep.
I had some mold on a plant. It was a tree fern that I got from a friend, you all. I have a friend who will go to like Hawaii and Puerto Rico and stuff, and he'll get plants, like wild harvest them. He has
Australian or Japanese?
the tree fern. It was from, I think this with the species that grows in Puerto Rico. I can't remember this exact deets right now.
Either one could, but yeah.
But it's the one that's native there. They have a native like tree. It's pretty much that one. I can't remember right now. If someone was to like Google a name and throw it down there, I'd probably remember it, but I can't. It's not coming to me right now. But nonetheless, I had this thing. It had all these fungal gnats up there, and the people were like, "Use the cinnamon, Derek." Camille specifically, again, the plant blurred was like, "Derek, you have to use the cinnamon." I'm telling you, these northern people, they think they know everything. She was like, "You have to use the cinnamon. It's going to get you what you need." And I was like, "What?" So I went to the store and I got a bunch of cinnamon, poured it all over my plants, and the only thing I got was mold. So when you're talking about the peat, that is where I'm like, I grow in
Yes.
moisture holding.
That's the issue right there. So a fern, even in a tree form, Australian or the Japanese, are going to want a little bit more moisture retention than most. So you would have some kind of peat mix in there, or some vermiculite, or something that's going to really hold that moisture. And I can see where that would be a problem with using cinnamon. I mean, it gets funky. There's plenty of pictures out there, people pouring cinnamon on their plants, and it gets funky indoors.
There's totally. So you've talked about using those cinnamon. So we're jumping track, and we'll start like answering some questions in a few, because this is going to be a very quick thing, right? The people that missed out on this and didn't stay for the end, you'll be able to see it on YouTube, and it'll be live here. But chances are there may be one day where I just stop saving all of the lives here and they're just on YouTube. So I hope the people see it live. But nonetheless, Ryan, you say that you have used cinnamon in some good antifungal ways. And I trust you more so than random people on the internet, because I can tell a grower when I see a grower. Growers know growers. Game recognize game.
Always. So I'll show you exact spots. Actually, I got a handful of plants around me where this stuff has been used, and maybe it would have calloused off and worked just fine on its absolute own, but I dumped generous amounts of cinnamon, and this is a very prime example. This is probably the most hacked up caudex I have. This thing experienced some gnarly rot.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm working with one hand here, kind of. Rotted all the way to the inside of this plant.
And when you're
So I sharpened a spoon and I scooped it out just like a pumpkin.
So you scooped it out like a pumpkin, the rot, and then what did you do after that? Put the cinnamon over
it? And then I heavily coated this thing with cinnamon. And we were able to lift this caudex up even more, and I did not experience any further rot. But it's not just that plant, it's this very unique Adenium swazicum.
Oh, that
two trunks,
to me.
One pot. You can see on the back side here, this is actually a root cutting off of the base of another massive plant.
Wow.
I forgot about this one. Lauren discovered this in the carport. It's now one of the coolest ones we've got. But here's a prime example. Little tiny cuts made all over this to give this kind of the shapely look. I didn't want feeder roots popping off. I didn't want a bunch of mess right there. I wanted this cleaner look for it. So every single one of these little cuts made above the soil line has been treated with cinnamon also.
Wowza.
And like I said, I briefly looked up. It's about destroying cell walls on the fungal aspect of things. So
that makes sense. And for those of you who don't know, like the plants, because we got a couple of questions coming in. So those of you who don't know, everything is made of cells that is living, right? And when you are trying to get rid of something, it's about disrupting that life cycle. Whether it's I'm disrupting the breeding patterns, by making it inhospitable for them to breed, or I'm literally where I'm destroying tissue and destroying that plant. So Ryan, are you using like the Dollar Tree cinnamon? Are you getting the expensive stuff? What are you getting? Are you getting the Celion cinnamon? What are you using?
All right, so I used to use the Badia stuff, the cheapest available, Badia. Right now, there's a massive recall on that because of lead being contaminated in all of their spices, so I wouldn't necessarily go with that. I've been using a little bit fancier product. It's a couple bucks more, and it's referred to as Saigon cinnamon. But from what I'm reading, the Ceylon, Ceylon, may be the best. I don't know. The Saigon seems to work. And I experienced something the first time using it a few weeks back. I sprayed my plant down to bare root, and I always want to make sure I set it off in the shade to callus off. With desert roses, with most succulents, you want to let them callus off before repotting, and I never water them in like you would with a tropical. Anyway, I poured a bunch of cinnamon all over this plant, and it got all over my arm, and my arm started burning like crazy. And I was like, this is interesting. I hope I didn't just fry this plant. This is the same plant I did it with. We repotted this one up with Z at Plants and Stones and Mike at Handling the Earth the other day. You can see there were a number of cuts made just to get that smoother like Caudex. She has yet to be reinflated. I will not be watering her for probably another week, but I find with succulents, when you withhold the water, they send feeder roots and you get a much better established root ball. It's back asswards from what you would do with a tropical. I understand that, but sometimes when working with these plants from inclement environments, like I live in Florida, we get rain every day if it could happen. It's different.
This has been, but you've blown my mind here. This is why my mouth is agape, because I will plant succulents in, and lately I've had a string of succulent plantings just die off. And I
don't water them in.
And
don't water them
in. And then I'm like, I'm going to leave you alone. And that's the reason. Right? See, this is why we talk to other growers. Because even me,
it's a simple thing. Freak them out. Let them send feeder roots out searching for water, and you have a much better established root base. Just hold off for a week or two.
It makes sense. It's just like typically even so my soil mixes I use
it's back asswards, bud.
It is. I use a Coco Core peat mix. So I recycle soil. Any soil I use, unless it was like terribly like infested with insects or like a terrible disease.
Yeah, and if you've experienced some rot, I hope you're baking it out a little bit. You know? Or just exposing it to sunlight, spreading it in a thin layer out, and just letting sunlight hit it. You know what I mean? Like, don't leave it in a wet bucket.
Now, Ryan, I want you to know, if I experience rot, I'm not going to wait for the sun because I'm in. Okay, so I have an old electric pressure cooker in the house from Cuisine or y'all.
Lauren, you want to say hi? Lauren's going to pop in real quick. She just brought the type of cinnamon I'm using.
Lauren, look at you. Come back in this camera.
Come back.
Look at you.
Come back here.
Yeah, how you doing?
So she's watching us from inside, realized I didn't have the Saigon cinnamon next to me, but this is what I've been using lately.
I've actually seen that brand before. This is beautiful. So I actually changes my whole thing because I use, again, a recycled soil. And again, for cleaning it, I'll either dilute peroxide, I have 12% peroxide, or I will like quickly.
Sorry, the dogs are barking now. It's throwing off my audio. She's going to go calm them down.
Okay, yes, calm them down. We love it. So that is my whole perspective. And I can talk about, we can do more of these, and more of you are like, more of these. I can talk about the crazy stuff I do to sanitize soil at home, versus like what it relates to in like typical growing situations. Me and Ryan can share whatever we want to share. But Ryan, somebody question that I think you could probably answer, because I've not had success with jade. One person is saying they have a jade and it's so hot, I guess they have it outside, they water them. How often should they water them because they have one with yellow leaves on it? My first question would be to that person. I think this is 1001 Dave B.
All right, so jade's an interesting interesting one. Underwatering shows almost the exact same signs as overwatering. Your lower leaves will get slightly wrinkled. Usually when yellowing is occurring, you're overwatering. Uh, 4-year-old jade, 6 feet wide, branches bigger. I hack those plants. Just as a general rule of thumb with jade, they want the least nutrient provided soil as possible. You do not want to fertilize those plants. They really love being pot bound, first of all, and they love a very basic soil without a whole lot of nutrients. You're not going to be wanting to put in something fancy. Like, they don't need the fertilizer. The problem with succulents is they don't know when they drink too much nitrogen. The nitrogen, it causes the chloroplast, the cell walls, to actually expand so much. They drink so much, they explode, and then you experience rot. So I know a little bit of the academic stuff. It's not quite at the level of the botanist above, but just in my experiences of growing succulents, and that's where my love is at. You have to be careful with chloroplasts in succulents. They have a crassulacean acid metabolism or CAM photosynthesis. They only open their pores at night. So they're sipping water at night or the morning dew. Normal plants respirate all day long. You'll see when you water your plant, you'll see in a tropical plant, oftentimes they're shedding extra water in the form of drips coming off the end of your leaf tips. That'll never happen with a succulent. They'll never open their pores during the day because they're from such hot environments. So they only open them at night to drink, and that's what truly makes a succulent a succulent. Unfortunately, they don't know when too much nitrogen is what allows the chloroplast to expand, and you always use low nitrogen products in succulents and cacti because they can drink too much and burst their own chloroplasts and cause rot.
Ooh, geez, I did not mean to do that. I second all of that I heard. I had a phone call come through because people only want to call me when I'm doing lives. So I second all of that. I was trying to also get a leaf of my stevia plant and I grabbed something else. That's aggravating. So you grow a heap of.
I'm sweating over here. Sorry, guys. I'm like dabbing off I just got out of a bath. Like I soaked myself in 4 pounds of Epsom salts before this live.
Now, can I ask you something? If you went through all of this, why didn't you tell me this? We could have just rescheduled for next week.
We'll do it again next week too, if you want.
I mean, we definitely will do it again next week. But I'm just saying, like,
I just like talking to normal humans on here, people that know their shit. Like, there's so many people popping off with random things. Some of the stuff you go after, and I pride you for that, man. Like, I go after some nonsense. That's your lane. Like, a lot of it is absolute nonsense, and I disagreed with you when it came to cinnamon. And
good conversation about it at that.
Then we have a conversation. Yeah, I love this man. He's cool as fuck.
You know, you loved by me as well. So this is where I think it's really about, though, because we had a disagreement because I was like, cinnamon is not antifungal, cinnamon is not this. I've looked up the studies, but his own experience has shown a difference. And again, unlike other people, there's a lot of people I interact with. I will talk to any of you, right? Any of you, much to sometimes my own dismay, I will talk to all of you. But as far as being able to believe what some of you tell me, some of it I just take a grain of salt and I just sprinkle it up. So that's where when he was like, Derek, you wrong about this one. I knew.
I said I'd die on this hill. I would die on this hill.
He said that. And I was like, And we talked offline, and I said, you know what? Let me see. And he showed me them same plants he's shown. I've seen all his plants for years. And I was like, okay. So the last thing is really for me, because I don't grow a lot of succulents like that. I have some, but I don't do a lot of succulents. The last thing is for me to just give it a shot and just test it in a different sense than I have. Because again, all the different things you're doing with the different soil mixes that I don't typically do. I don't make a lot of soil mixes. I have some of these herbs and spices, I think it's called. I used a little bit of that on a snake plant, and that snake plant is growing up in snake heaven now because it was already on its way out. But so let's pivot in the last, I guess, 8 minutes we got here. What are some of the things you see people doing wrong with these succulents? Like, I know we can talk about the basics. I know we can talk about some of the deep science. I know we can talk about environments and stuff, and we have. But what if it is any of those things, some combination? What do you think, in your expert opinion, people will get wrong about succulents? Or even on the flip side, what's a tip you can give them to keep their succulents alive?
So number one would be what we briefly touched on already. Don't water those things in. So when you're
Mm,
repotting, upon repotting, go ahead and hold it off from water. I know it might hurt you and the plant might look like shit for a few days. Trust me, it's going to be better in the long run. What happens instantly is she sends out these little feeder roots. They're smaller than the other roots and they're searching for water. And I feel like when that happens, when you withhold for 7 to 14 days after repotting, those things are giving you a better established root base. Once you do water, you will see the plant may inflate much faster than if you had just watered it in initially. And you've then avoided the potential for rot. Um, yeah, I mean, succulents are completely different. You would never do that with a tropical, with an aglaonema, with a ficus, with the other things. I grow a lot of rare philodendrons out back. I don't show them often because I don't really care. I keep them around because they're fun and the foliage is beautiful, or foliage, as some of us would say. See, little toss out there. Um, I don't know. I fell for these things in my mid 20s. I'm now 40, and yeah, I don't know. This is all I'm ever going to do. I'm perfectly happy with knowing that. I'm more interested in specimens and stuff like that, and I don't take on clients really anymore unless you're somebody special. But that's a whole nother story. Another thing, so behind watering and watering in succulents, a lot of people are overthinking stuff. So I
mm,
break it down to light, temperature, and water. I even look at soil and soil amendments as something to keep that trinity in check. I try to make it, we're getting some thunder out here. I try to make it as easy as possible. I read a culture guide from Highland Succulents many, many years ago, and it's kind of drilled into me the whole light, temperature, and water. That's a triangle. Everything moves together. Higher light, higher temperatures, higher water contents. And then I break it down from there. But everything else is just keeping that trinity in check. And I don't know if people get it. Maybe I'm not explaining it well enough, but it's light, temp, and water for me first, and everything else. I feel like it allows me to dumb things down. And I'm not saying you have to be dumb to work with plants, but a lot of us overthink this stuff. A lot of us are doing everything you can with bananas and eggshells and all this other shit that it drives me nuts. They make good fertilizer out there too. They really do make good fertilizer. Never use what they tell you to because they're in the business of selling you fertilizer. Use less. And with the case of succulents and cacti, use half the strength of what they're telling you to because it's going to be much safer for your plants. Not tropicals, I wouldn't do that. But yeah, some of these things are in business to make money. And you have to realize that. The other day I was commenting on somebody's post. They had a natural aphid remover. I said, aphids? Like, that's the easiest thing in the world to get rid of.
yeah, I,
You can do it a number of different ways. I don't use pesticides here in the yard. When I can, I get away with 1 part vinegar to 3 parts water and some dish soap as a spreader sticker to cling to the natural oils of the leaves. But I find that if you water those plants in heavily enough beforehand, you're not going to adjust the pH levels of the soil. And a little bit of vinegar, 1 to 3 parts water, is just enough acidity to fry those little bugs.
well, yeah, because it's not enough to like truly impact your soil. So that is beautiful. And speaking of fertilizers, I am an Arbor representative. I don't have a bottle with me. We're just going to pretend like right here in my hand is a bottle of Arbor, ARBER. You can purchase it in the link in my bio. They are not sponsoring me, but I am an ambassador for them.
Hey,
So before,
if you're using a good product, don't be afraid to shout it
oh,
out. There's solid products out there.
Arbor is amazing. I use a lot of different products, and maybe that's one thing. The podcast that I keep telling y'all about that's eventually going to come out, Steven, you got to meet Steven. He's a great guy. He is a great grower. He's now he's moved. I'm not going to tell his business. You'll just have to listen to it on the podcast.
Send me a link or something.
But I'm good to see it. But nonetheless, people, we talk about products that we use, and that may be something I'll do one day as a series too. The more you grow, just different products that I buy because there's some people who will be like, what fertilizers you use, what soils you use, what da 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 you use. And I'm like, oh, I use these things. Sometimes things is the cheapest, but there are some brands I really respect. So, hey, Roman. So, with this, before we leave, can you do me one favor? Can you show a plant that you may want to? Tell us just quickly what that plant is and the basics of its care. And I'm going to do the same over here.
All right, I'll show you. I'll pop this one up here. Hold on. This is one of my favorites. Damn, you guys hear that lightning coming around? We've been in a drought for like 2 years, and I just got a week's worth of rain. It's been nice. This is a Saudi gem. This is Adenium arabicum times obesum.
Ooh, you better be.
Plant. This is why I refer to myself as Florida fat plants. Flowers are nice, but I'm in it for this caudex. I really see. I cleaned up some of them feeder roots. I love these things. Okay. There's something about desert roses. Let me put that down. I find them to be, far more responsive than most plants. When I feed them, I can watch them fatten up. I love that big booty aspect that they have. Water when dry for a lazy grower like myself, it works well. Daily rains can be a pain in the ass, but in the summertime, they're growing like crazy. Below 45 degrees and wet is an issue. Being wet isn't an issue. Being cold isn't an issue. But when those two things happen at the same time, that's a problem here in Florida. So in my wintertime, some of these things come inside and take over my two-bedroom house. The cats end up getting booted out of the guest bedroom because unfortunately everything I grow is incredibly toxic. To this day in Africa, they are still using adeniums and my other favorite, Pagipodium. Basically spiky adeniums, spiky desert roses. They're still using them to tip poison arrows and shoot small game. So the sap in there is toxic enough to immobilize small game within 50 to 100 yards when shot with an arrow. And I got to be careful. I've got a lot of animals now. My girl's the rescue coordinator for this county. And yeah, my collection's outdoors now that we brought more animals into the house.
Okay. Hey, well, I'm going to show off mine. Okay. This is a tiger lily. I got these bulbs from the Walmart or somewhere. I don't feel like I got them from the Walmart. They grow lovely black dotted, not a bug. Bulbil. And a bulbil is spelled like bulb, B2, any bone. I had several of them, and then I went through a depression a couple of years in the summer. And I thought they were gone forever, but they're much earlier behind me. I'll talk about.
I keep putting my phone closer and closer because I can barely hear you.
Okay, is it me? Now y'all are saying, am I cutting out a lot, or is it both of us, or is it me? Is it me? Is it? If it's me, let me know. You said you can barely. We had this problem last time, as a matter of fact. I think it is me. I do feel like I'm projecting so much. Okay, can you hear me now?
You talk about ants going after succulents because so there was a quick question about ants going after succulents. You got to be careful with ants. Oftentimes they will pull other insects from other plants and introduce them to others as a harvest method. They love mealybugs. There's aphids that they feed on too, depending on the type of ant. They can transfer them to another plant where they're happy and harvest those bugs. So usually when you have ants there, they're actually feeding on something else and or harvesting something else. Be careful, especially down here. I can't speak for across the nation, but in Southwest Florida, ants are a tell that something else is going on.
For me, I haven't had them on succulents because all my succulents are indoors. The ones I had outdoors died. Very sad story, really. But for me, they're not firing. I don't really worry about them. And they are kind of a sign that they're going after something else, in my opinion. I grew Loofah aegyptica, which is a gourd. Beautiful gourd you can grow and make like the loofah you clean yourself with. They have these things called nectarines up the stick.
Yeah, it's starting to pour out here. I'm going to have to pack
Okay.
up.
nectaries on the stem, and they're beautiful. So with that, this has been the first installment of The More You Grow. This is Derek Haynes. I am Derek Haynes. This is Ryan of Flat Florida Plants. There we go. Follow us.
Florida Fat Plant.
Florida Flat Plants. I'm going to get this right one day. I'm going to write it down and have it in front of me. Please be sure to check in and join us. While he goes, I am going to do this last thing, because I said I would do this last time if I got over 60,000. The first person whose hashtag
You broke up. I didn't hear any of it.
You can't hear me?
That part broke up for me.
Instagram doesn't want me to be great. The first person whose hashtag I see in the comments, I'm going to give them $5. That means you put your hashtag at the bottom. I don't know if the people can hear me, okay? But hopefully you can. Can you hear me, Ryan?
I can hear you.
There we go. Again, hashtag at the bottom, because I said this last time. People join at the beginning, they leave, and they don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, I'm going to give an award. So the person whose hashtag I see at the bottom, like your $ for Cash App, you put that at the bottom, and I'm going to see, and I'm going to do, there we go. Looks like we got one, and I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot. That was, because see, people pay attention. This is Sonja Media, Soft Skill Swim. So with that, Coy, you were just too slow. Instagram didn't want all y'all to hear it. So I'm going to give, actually, I'm going to do those two people. Let's do two people and give out two winners, because we do two winners in this daytime. Ryan, thank you for joining me today.
Pilea Plants and Things just joined. She's one of my favorites over there at the greenhouse. Thanks for coming out, man. I am getting dumped on right now as we talk. Hey, let's do this again, Derek.
I'm
soon.
serious. Let's do it.
Let's talk anything, man. I don't have the knowledge that you do, but I got some experience.
Look, I thank y'all. Those of you who won, y'all will be getting your $5 in like 5 minutes. Thank y'all so much. This is why people should stay to the end. Y'all should talk about this. People should stay to the end. Y'all don't know what I'm going to do. Ryan, you be great, and I will talk to you all soon. Y'all have a good one.